The cold, sterile air of the courtroom seemed to amplify the tremor in her voice, but it was the smirk on my father's face as he spoke that truly sent a shiver down my spine. "She's always been irresponsible," he stated, his tone as flat and final as a judge's gavel. "We've enabled her for too long, and now it's time for her to face the consequences of her own poor decisions." The words hung in the air, a manufactured indictment designed to paint me as the villain, the black sheep who had squandered every opportunity. They had orchestrated this, a carefully curated performance designed to strip me of everything I had worked for, all under the guise of tough love. My mother sat beside him, her face a mask of practiced sorrow, nodding in agreement with every venomous word, her eyes meeting mine briefly, a flicker of something unreadable, triumph, before she looked away. My normal, it seemed, had always been built on a foundation of their unspoken expectations, a constant tightrope walk between their approval and their judgment, a performance I'd been unknowingly perfecting for years. The truth was, my irresponsibility was their convenient narrative. I remembered vividly the summer after my first year of college. I'd come home bubbling with excitement about a summer internship opportunity in another state, a chance to gain real-world experience. My mother had sat me down, her fingers laced tightly in her lap, and explained, with a sigh that promised martyrdom, how much she'd miss me, how lonely the house would be without my presence. The internship offer, she lamented, had come at such a difficult time. My father, overhearing, had chimed in, "Don't burden your mother, son. We can always find something for you to do around here. Besides, those out-of-state ventures can be expensive." The internship evaporated. Instead, I spent the summer doing odd jobs around their sprawling, empty house, my dreams neatly packed away. Then there was the time I'd finally saved enough for a down payment on a small condo, a place of my own, a tangible symbol of independence. My father had called, his voice laced with a manufactured concern. "Are you sure about this, son? A mortgage is a serious commitment. We've been thinking, that money could be put to better use. Perhaps helping us with some home renovations we've been putting off. It would be an investment in the family." The condo purchase was postponed indefinitely, the down payment absorbed into leaky gutters and a fresh coat of beige paint for the living room. Each instance was a subtle redirection, a gentle smothering of my aspirations, always couched in their well-being, their needs, their plans. The psychological toll was insidious, a constant feeling of being tethered, of never quite being able to take flight, of their invisible hands always pulling me back to the familiar, stifling landscape they had carved out for me. And then came the day of the hearing. The air in the courtroom was thick with the metallic tang of anxiety and the faint scent of stale polish. I sat on the worn wooden bench, the manila folder containing my meticulously prepared defense resting on my lap, its edges digging into my thighs. My parents were seated across from me, their posture erect, radiating an air of dignified grievance. The judge, a stern-faced woman with sharp, observant eyes, had been listening patiently to their narrative, a tale spun from half-truths and exaggerations, painting me as a reckless spendthrift who had squandered a significant family inheritance. I could feel their eyes on me, their silent communication a palpable pressure. My father, sensing his narrative gaining traction, leaned forward, his voice resonating with an almost theatrical sincerity. "Your Honor, we believe it is in everyone's best interest, especially ours, given her history of financial instability, that this property be placed under sole guardianship. We've prepared the necessary documentation to facilitate this transition." He gestured towards a stack of papers on his lawyer's table. My mother, her hand resting on his arm, offered a fragile smile to the judge, a silent plea for understanding. A wave of nausea washed over me. They were actively trying to take my home, the one place I had managed to secure for myself, independent of their influence. The betrayal was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My own parents, the people who were supposed to be my staunchest allies, were actively working to dismantle my life. The silence that followed my father's statement stretched, taut and suffocating. The judge's gaze flickered between my parents and me, her expression unreadable. It was in that agonizing silence, as the weight of their orchestrated deception settled upon me, that something shifted. The hurt, the anger, the years of suppressed resentment coalesced into a cold, unwavering resolve. I didn't interrupt, didn't raise my voice. Instead, I calmly reached for my own manila folder. My hands were steady, my breathing even. I slid the folder across the table towards the judge. "Your Honor," I began, my voice clear and devoid of emotion, "my parents' claims are, at best, a selective interpretation of the facts, and at worst, a deliberate misrepresentation." I opened the folder, and with deliberate precision, I pulled out a single document. It was a notarized affidavit, signed and dated 6 months prior, detailing a formal agreement I had reached with my parents regarding the inheritance. In exchange for their relinquishing any claim to my current property and future inheritance, I had agreed to a mutually beneficial arrangement that secured their retirement fund with a substantial, yet manageable, lump sum from my share. The key clause, one they had overlooked in their haste and arrogance, stated unequivocally that any attempt to dispute my ownership of my residence, or to interfere with my financial independence, would nullify their access to that agreed-upon retirement fund. I laid the document flat on the table, allowing the stark legality of it to speak for itself. The judge picked it up, her sharp eyes scanning the text. A subtle change came over her expression, a softening of her stern demeanor, replaced by an almost imperceptible widening of her eyes. Across the table, my father's smug assurance began to crumble. His face, previously etched with confident entitlement, contorted into a mask of disbelief, then dawning horror. My mother's practiced sorrow dissolved, revealing a raw, unadulterated panic. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. My father sputtered, a choked sound escaping his throat, but his words caught, trapped behind the sudden, stark realization of what he had done. The aftermath was a symphony of their desperation. My mother's text started almost immediately, a frantic barrage of pleading and veiled threats. "Are you trying to ruin us? How could you do this to your own parents? Your father is beside himself." The flying monkeys, as I'd come to know them, soon followed. My aunt called, her voice dripping with manufactured concern, questioning my sanity, my loyalty. My father's brother, a man who had always been a distant figure, suddenly remembered my existence, his message a thinly veiled demand for an explanation. They couldn't comprehend it. They, who had always held the reins, who had always dictated the terms, had been outmaneuvered by their own son, by the very person they had dismissed as incapable. My father, stripped of his perceived power and the financial security he had so confidently expected, retreated into a furious, sulky silence. My mother, unable to reconcile her vision of victimhood with the reality of her own actions, descended into a spiral of performative victimhood that fooled no one. The property remained mine. Their retirement fund, the ultimate leverage they had so carelessly gambled away, was now out of their reach, secured by a piece of paper they had so arrogantly disregarded. There was no grand pronouncement, no triumphant fanfare. Just the quiet, definitive click of a door locking, a door that had been held open for far too long. The silence that followed their frantic attempts to reclaim control was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of consequences, cold, quiet, and absolute.